It's 1878 in industrial Manchester. A group of railway workers from the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway band together to form a football team. They call it Newton Heath LYR Football Club. Humble beginnings, right? But here's where the story gets messy. By the late 1890s, Newton Heath was sinking. Financial struggles had them gasping for air, and their home ground, North Road, wasn't much better. It was surrounded by railway tracks and even shared with cattle. In 1902, bankruptcy was knocking on the door, inches away from disappearing completely. And then came their savior, John Henry Davies, a local brewery magnate. Davies injected cash into the club, rebranded it as Manchester United, and even brought in new colors, those famous red shirts. Things started to look up. By 1908, United clinched their first league title, and the following year, they bagged the FA Cup. A new powerhouse was emerging in English football, but the interwar years were brutal for United. But what's football without a comeback story? And United's greatest chapter was just about to begin. Before we talk about Sir Matt Busby, the Busby Babes, and the tragedy that would shake the football world, here's a question. Did you know that Manchester United almost didn't hire Busby? Stick around because this story is just getting started. Let me ask you something. How do you rebuild a club after years of chaos, war, and near irrelevance? Well, in 1945, Manchester United found their answer, Sir Matt Busby. But here's the twist. Busby wasn't your average manager. He wasn't content with being a figurehead or just picking the team. Nope, Busby demanded complete control of training, tactics, and transfers, and it almost cost him the job. But the board took a gamble, and what followed was nothing short of historic. While other clubs were relying on seasoned veterans, Busby wanted to develop a team built from the ground up, full of raw talent. Enter the Busby Babes. Imagine a squad bursting with energy led by young stars like Duncan Edwards, Bobby Charlton, and Dennis Viollet. They didn't just play football, oh boy, they danced with it. By 1956, the Babes had stormed to back-to-back league titles, and their dominance was only beginning. But then came February 6, 1958, a date forever etched in football history. The Munich air disaster. It's hard to even put into words what that day meant for Manchester United. The team was returning from a European Cup match in Belgrade when their plane crashed during a stopover in Munich. 23 people lost their lives, including 8 of the Busby Babes. Duncan Edwards, the player many believed would become the greatest footballer of all time, was among those who didn't survive. Now think about this. How do you recover from losing not just players, but the heart and soul of your team? For most clubs, that would have been the end. Not Manchester United, and not Matt Busby. Against all odds, Busby, who himself was gravely injured in the crash, returned to rebuild the team yet again. And rebuild he did. Just a decade after the tragedy, Busby led Manchester United to their greatest triumph yet, the 1968 European Cup. With George Best dazzling on the pitch, Dennis Law finding the net, and Bobby Charlton leading as captain, they became the first English club to conquer Europe. After Busby's retirement, Manchester United faced one of the darkest periods in their history. Curious to know how they clawed their way back to greatness? Stick around because the Ferguson revolution is just around the corner. When Alex Ferguson took over Manchester United in November 1986, he inherited a mess. The club was in free fall, sitting 21st in the first division, just one spot above relegation. Discipline among the players was non-existent. Some were more focused on drinking than winning. The first thing Ferguson did was crack down on the club's drinking culture. Players like Paul McGrath and Norman Whiteside were exceptionally talented but lacked professionalism. Ferguson, in his usual no-nonsense fashion, made it clear there would be no place for laziness in his team. His first full season in charge, 1987-88, showed glimpses of progress. United finished second in the league behind a dominant Liverpool side. There was hope, but that hope quickly faded the following season when United slumped to 11th place. Fans started questioning if Ferguson was really the right man for the job. United started the next season horrendously. They went on an 8-game winless streak in the league, and by December, they were hovering just above the relegation zone. But wait, there's a lot more to come. The media had already made up its mind. Ferguson had to go. Banners in the stands read 3 years of excuses and it's still crap. Ta-ra Fergie. The board was reportedly considering his dismissal. Had things gone differently, Ferguson might have been remembered as just another failed United manager, but fate had other plans. It all came down to one tournament, the FA Cup. If United lost, Ferguson was almost certainly gone. What happened next was the moment that saved his career. A single goal from Mark Robins gave United a crucial 1-0 win. They survived. And as the FA Cup campaign continued, belief started to return. United fought their way to the final, where they faced Crystal Palace. The first match ended in a 3-3 draw, forcing a replay. This time, United held their nerve, winning 1-0 thanks to a Lee Martin goal. That trophy changed everything. It gave Ferguson breathing room. It silenced his critics. But winning the FA Cup was just the beginning. He built the greatest generation of young talent English football has ever seen. Up next, the class of '92 and how they reshaped Manchester United forever. After surviving the early years and lifting the FA Cup in 1990, Alex Ferguson started to work on a vision. In the early 1990s, a group of young players emerged from the club's youth system. Talent so special they would define an era. You already know the names: Ryan Giggs, David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, and the Neville brothers, Gary and Phil. Who better to mold into that vision than a group of players who had United's DNA in their blood? But not everyone was convinced. In fact, one of the most infamous predictions in football history came from Alan Hansen, who, after watching United lose their opening game of the 95-96 season, declared, "You can't win anything with kids." And guess what? He couldn't have been more wrong. It was a gamble, but Ferguson knew something the critics didn't. These kids weren't just talented, they were fearless. Giggs was already a regular, Beckham had an unbelievable right foot, Scholes could score from anywhere, and Gary Neville was a defensive warrior. And how did they respond? By proving everyone wrong. That season, United won the Premier League and the FA Cup, completing a historic double. Beckham's halfway line goal against Wimbledon, Scholes' light winners, Giggs tearing down the wing. It was the beginning of something legendary. But here's the real genius of Ferguson. When Beckham started focusing too much on fame, Ferguson sent him a reminder with a flying boot to the face. When Giggs or Scholes got complacent, he'd bring in new signings to push them. He created an environment where no one could afford to drop their standards. And it worked. The class of '92 wasn't just the golden generation. They were the foundation of the most dominant United side in history. Up next is how Manchester United conquered the world. You think you've seen dominance? You think you've seen greatness? Sit tight, because nothing compares to what Manchester United did in 1999. Winning the league? That's tough. Winning the FA Cup? Even tougher. But winning the Premier League, FA Cup, and the Champions League in the same season? That's not just success, that's immortality. And the way United did it, pure heart-stopping drama. But let's rewind a bit, because before United could conquer the world, they had to survive it. By Christmas of the 98-99 season, United weren't even top of the league. Arsenal, the reigning champions under Arsene Wenger, were breathing down their necks. Every game felt like a final. Every point mattered. 1-0 down against Liverpool in the FA Cup? No problem. Dwight York and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer flipped the game on its head in stoppage time. A must-win clash against Arsenal at Old Trafford? Up steps Ryan Giggs with that solo goal, tearing through defenders like a man possessed. And just when Arsenal thought they could snatch the title, United played the ultimate mind game. In their final league match, they fell behind at Tottenham. Lose, and Arsenal would be champions. But did United panic? Of course not. Beckham equalized. Andy Cole chipped the keeper for the winner. Premier League secured. First step complete. Winning the league was one thing, but United still had Arsenal standing in their way in the FA Cup semi-finals. And this wasn't just any Arsenal side. This was peak Wenger ball. The first match ended 0-0. The replay? A different story. This was the game that had everything. United took the lead. Arsenal equalized. Then, in the dying minutes, they won a penalty. Dennis Bergkamp stepped up. If he scored, United's treble dream was over. Then came the moment Peter Schmeichel became a legend. He saved it. Extra time. United needed a hero. And that's when Ryan Giggs picked up the ball in his own half. What happened next is one of the greatest solo goals in football history. Darting past one defender, then another, before smashing it past David Seaman. Shirt off, chest out, running wild. That was the moment United knew this treble, it was meant to be. Coming up next is the Champions League final. 90 minutes of despair, 2 minutes of glory. Fast forward to May 26, 1999. Barcelona. United versus Bayern Munich. A chance to complete the impossible. But from the first whistle, things went wrong. Bayern took the lead in the 6th minute. United, missing their captain Roy Keane and midfield enforcer Paul Scholes, looked flat. Bayern hit the post, then the crossbar. Ferguson stood on the sidelines, arm folded. Was this how it was going to end? And then came stoppage time. United won a corner. Beckham swung it in. The ball bounced around the box and Teddy Sheringham stabbed it home. 1-1. United fans lost their minds. But before they could catch their breath, United won another corner. Beckham swung it in again. Sheringham flicked it on. And then the moment of glory, the moment the United fans were waiting for. Solskjaer stuck out his boot and sent the ball crashing into the net. United had won it. In 90 seconds, they had turned defeat into glory. Ferguson's face said it all. Arms raised, mouth open, pure disbelief. Champions of England, champions of Europe, champions of history. Manchester United had just pulled off the greatest season English football had ever seen. Winning the treble wasn't the end of Manchester United's dominance. It was just the beginning. If the late 90s cemented United as England's greatest team, the 2000s turned them into an unstoppable machine. Fresh off their treble, Manchester United looked unbeatable. In 1999-2000, they won the Premier League with a record-breaking 18-point gap over second-place Arsenal. 97 goals scored, only 45 conceded. They wrapped up the title in April. If that's not domination, what is? The following season, another title, a three-peat. Dwight York and Andy Cole were scoring for fun, while Beckham, Giggs, and Scholes ran the show. But United fell short in Europe, crashing out to Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarterfinals. Then came Ferguson's first major mistake, selling Jaap Stam in 2001. The rock of United's defense was gone, and they felt it. That season, Arsenal took the crown. Ferguson never let failure last long. In 2002-03, he brought in Rio Ferdinand and United reclaimed the title. Ruud van Nistelrooy scored 44 goals in all competitions. The machine was back on track. Then in 2003, Ferguson pulled off one of the greatest signings of all time. Enter Cristiano Ronaldo, a skinny 18-year-old Portuguese winger who bamboozled defenders with step-overs and raw pace. He was inconsistent at first, but Ferguson saw something special. By 2006, Ronaldo had bulked up. He was faster, stronger, deadlier. That same year, United signed another generational talent, Wayne Rooney. At 20, he was already a monster, scoring screamers for fun. But Chelsea had arrived. Jose Mourinho's men took the league by storm, winning back-to-back titles in 2005 and 2006. United were good, but no longer great. But after that season, something changed. If you want to know when United peaked, it was 2006 through 2009. Sir Alex Ferguson had seen enough. He was ready to challenge again. Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney were no longer just potential. Paul Scholes, returning from injury, reminded the world why he was one of the best midfielders of his generation. Ryan Giggs, now a veteran, still had that burst of pace and intelligence. Vidic and Patrice Evra, who arrived in 2006, had fully adapted, forming a defensive wall alongside Rio Ferdinand. And then there was Michael Carrick, United's understated but crucial midfield metronome, dictating the tempo. The season didn't just start well, it exploded into life. They attacked in waves, ripping teams apart with blistering counterattacks. By Christmas, they were top of the league, their rivals struggling to keep up. And then came one of the defining moments, April 2007, Old Trafford against Roma in the Champions League quarterfinals. They humiliated Roma 7-1. Ronaldo scored twice, Rooney was electric, and United played some of the most breathtaking football Europe had ever seen. That season, Ronaldo took the leap. 23 goals, countless moments of magic, a constant menace on the wing. He was no longer just a showman, he was a match winner. Rooney, ever selfless, played the perfect partner, dropping deep, linking play, scoring big goals. By May, the title was theirs. The first Premier League trophy in 4 years. But they weren't done yet. The following season would take them to an even higher level. If 2006-07 was a return to dominance, 07-08 was pure perfection. Ronaldo hit 42 goals in all competitions, 42. A winger playing like a striker, scoring headers, free kicks, long-range screamers. He won the Ballon d'Or, cementing himself as the best in the world. Rooney, always the workhorse, was still vital. His link-up play, his tenacity, his ability to score when it mattered. Then came Carlos Tevez, the final piece of the puzzle. United's new attack was devastating. Pace, power, unpredictability. Their biggest rivals? Chelsea, again. This time, the battle wasn't just for the league, it was for Europe. United stormed through the Champions League, dispatching Lyon, Roma, and then Barcelona in the semi-finals thanks to a moment of brilliance from Scholes, a 25-yard thunderbolt at Old Trafford. And then the final, Moscow, Manchester United versus Chelsea. A rainy night, a war of attrition. Ronaldo, inevitable, scores a bullet header, but Frank Lampard equalizes, and then the game drags on to penalties. And then the moment, John Terry steps up, one kick away from winning Chelsea the Champions League. He slips, he misses. Minutes later, Edwin van der Sar saves Nicolas Anelka's penalty. United are champions of Europe. That season, they conquered everything. The Premier League, the Champions League, an era-defining team led by a generational talent. After winning 3 consecutive league titles, a Champions League, and reaching another final in 2009, United were still a force. But something was different. Something was missing. The biggest loss? Cristiano Ronaldo. The man who had been at the heart of their dominance left for Real Madrid in a world record £80 million move. His departure wasn't just about the goals, it was about the fear factor. Defenders were terrified of him. Now that fear was gone. United tried to fill the void, but Antonio Valencia was no Ronaldo. Dimitar Berbatov, as classy as he was, didn't have the explosiveness to replace the Portuguese superstar. Rooney, though, stepped up. He had his best ever season, scoring 34 goals and carrying United on his back. There were moments of magic. His 4 goals against Hull City, his last-minute header against City, but the cracks were starting to show. The season had highs and lows. One of the most memorable nights came in the Champions League against AC Milan. David Beckham, now in Milan's colors, returned to Old Trafford, but United weren't in the mood for sentiment. They ripped Milan apart 4-0, with Rooney scoring twice. But there was also gut-wrenching defeats. A crucial loss to Chelsea in April. A game where Didier Drogba's offside goal stood proved fatal in the title race. United finished 1 point behind Chelsea. And in the Champions League, a painful quarterfinal exit to Bayern Munich. One moment, one lapse, and everything collapsed. The dominance was slipping. Ferguson was still a genius, but without Ronaldo, without that extra edge, United were just a fraction behind. Ronaldo was the heart of that team, and the following years, the cracks would grow deeper. Losing Ronaldo should have been the beginning of the end, but Ferguson wasn't done yet. In 2010, United still won the league. In 2011, they reached another Champions League final, again against Barcelona. And again, they were outclassed. United weren't kings of Europe anymore. Ferguson knew he had one last title in him. In 2012, United lost the league in the most painful way possible. Aguero! Manchester City stole the title on goal difference in the final seconds of the season. Ferguson was furious. He hated losing. So what did he do? He signed Robin van Persie, who fired United to their 13th Premier League title under Ferguson in 2012-13. It was Ferguson's final masterpiece. He had built and rebuilt United again and again, but now he was done. In May 2013, he announced his retirement. And just like that, the Ferguson era ended, but nobody realized how disastrous his departure would be. Manchester United had won 38 major trophies under Ferguson, but after his retirement, they spent 10 years searching for their next great leader and failing every time. What went wrong? And why has United never been the same since? Before we get to that, let's talk about Ferguson's legacy. Winning titles is hard. Winning 38 major trophies across 26 years, that's a level of dominance football may never see again. The Ferguson mentality. Losing? I don't accept it. He had this aura, this presence that demanded respect the moment he stepped into a room. Players feared him, they respected him, and most importantly, they trusted him. Let's talk about his tactics. In the early days, it was 4-4-2, two wingers whipping in crosses to lethal strikers like Cantona and Cole. Then, as the game got faster, he built fluid, dynamic teams with the class of '92, allowing Scholes, Giggs, and Beckham to control games with their movement and technique. By the mid-2000s, Ferguson had completely changed United's identity again, creating a rapid counter-attacking machine with Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez up front. And in the later years, as European football became more possession-based, he adapted again, shifting to a more balanced, controlled style with Van Persie, Carrick, and a disciplined defensive core. Was it only Ferguson? Not at all. Prime Manchester United had the players, and Ferguson didn't just sign superstars, he made them. Every era had its icons. In the 90s, he had Eric Cantona, Roy Keane, the warrior captain, Schmeichel, the unbeatable wall in goal, and the class of '92, Beckham's pinpoint crosses, Giggs' unstoppable dribbles, Scholes' bullet shots. But above everything, the football world is grateful to Ferguson. Man built Cristiano Ronaldo. He took a flashy teenager and turned him into a goal machine. Tevez was the engine. Rooney was the heart. Together, they made United terrifying. He had a monster mentality. He fueled the hatred between United and Arsenal, calling Wenger's team too soft. He psychologically destroyed Kevin Keegan in 1996, forcing him into a meltdown on live TV. And then there was Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, Rafa Benitez. Every top manager who faced Ferguson had to deal with his mind games. And when he was gone, the magic went with him. But what happened next? United had it all, the money, the facilities, the global fan base, and yet, after Ferguson retired, they fell apart. Brace yourself for the story of how United went from champions to a club in chaos, an absolute chaos. When Alex Ferguson lifted his final Premier League trophy in 2013, Manchester United stood as English football's ultimate powerhouse. 13 league titles under his reign, 20 in total, and an aura of invincibility. But the moment he stepped away, that dominance vanished. What followed? A decade of turmoil, wasted billions, managerial merry-go-rounds, and a club that seemed lost. Let's break it down one manager at a time. First, let's start with the chosen one. I'm afraid it should be the one who wasn't ready. Ferguson personally handpicked David Moyes, calling him the right man for the job. But in reality, he was stepping into impossible shoes. The squad was aging, the fear factor was gone, and Moyes, who had never won a major trophy, looked overwhelmed from day one. They finished 7th, United's worst finish in 25 years in the league, knocked out of the Champions League quarterfinals. Moyes struggled to command the dressing room. He publicly praised opponents, once saying Liverpool were favorites against United. Can you imagine Ferguson ever saying that? The players didn't believe in him, the fans turned, and by April 2014, he was sacked just 10 months in. United turned to Ryan Giggs, hoping nostalgia could fix the mess. He took charge for 4 games, winning 2, but it was clear United needed a big name to restore order. United went big, bringing in Louis van Gaal, the man who had just led the Netherlands to a 3rd-place finish at the World Cup. He was experienced, respected, and confident. Van Gaal's reign was dull. He finished 5th and 6th in his campaigns. His tactics were slow and lacked United's attacking DNA. Fans grew frustrated watching sideways passes instead of counterattacks. Yes, he brought in Anthony Martial and won an FA Cup, but the board wanted more. So despite delivering United's first post-Ferguson trophy, he was sacked within 48 hours of lifting the trophy. Enter Jose Mourinho, a serial winner, a fighter, and a man desperate to prove he could still dominate the Premier League. His first season? Actually not bad. He called his 2017-18 season, where United finished 2nd behind a record-breaking Manchester City, his greatest managerial achievement. And honestly, he had a point. United were nowhere near City's level, yet he squeezed everything out of that squad. But Mourinho's problem? When he explodes, he implodes. By 2018, he was feuding with Pogba, calling his own squad mentally weak and playing defensive, lifeless football. United were 19 points behind City at Christmas, and with the dressing room in total meltdown, he was sacked. His records: 144 games, 84 wins, 32 draws, 28 losses, a Europa League and League Cup in 2017. After years of pragmatic managers, United went for nostalgia, hiring Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Sounds familiar, right? Yes, the smiling assassin of 1999 Champions League fame. And to be fair, he started incredibly. His first 12 games, 10 wins, 2 draws. He brought excitement back. United played fast, attacking football again. Fans started to believe, but then reality hit. Solskjaer rebuilt the squad, signed Bruno Fernandes, and got United back into the Champions League. But tactically, he was out of his depth. He relied on individual brilliance rather than structured play. His biggest failure? Losing the 2021 Europa League final to Villarreal, a game where David De Gea missed the decisive penalty. That was his only shot at a trophy, and he blew it. By November 2021, after a 4-1 loss to Watford, he was gone. United then tried to experiment, bringing in Ralf Rangnick, a tactical guru, but not a manager. His job? Steady the ship and prepare for the next coach. Instead, he publicly called out the entire club. He had the worst defensive record in club history, 57 goals conceded in one season. He famously said, "This club needs open-heart surgery." And he wasn't wrong. United's squad was a mess. Morale was dead. For the first time, fans realized this wasn't just about bad managers. The entire structure was broken. But something happened in that campaign. In August 2021, the prodigal son returns. Cristiano Ronaldo, now 36, steps onto Old Trafford's hallowed turf to a deafening roar. Fans weep, jerseys fly off shelves, and pundits declare United are back. For a moment, it feels like 2008 again. Ronaldo delivers instant nostalgia. Last-minute Champions League winners against Villarreal, hat-tricks against Tottenham. He's carrying this team on his back, they say. But beneath the glitter, cracks widen. Fast forward to May 2022, Erik ten Hag arrives, hailed as a tactical genius after conquering Ajax. Early signs thrill fans. A 3-1 win over Arsenal, Rashford's resurgence, and a Carabao Cup triumph. Finally, a plan. But the optimism is built on quicksand. Ten Hag's marquee signing, Antony, becomes a $100 million meme. A winger allergic to goals, obsessed with spin moves. He's a TikTok player, groans Roy Keane. The squad is a Frankenstein's monster of fading stars with Maguire, Varane, and disgruntled egos of Pogba and Sancho. Ronaldo fumes as United crash out of the UCL group stage. They don't even press, he tells Piers Morgan. The frustration between Ronaldo and Ten Hag increased. By November 2022, the bomb drops, Ronaldo's explosive interview. The Glazers don't care about the club. Nothing has changed since Ferguson. The reunion ends in a nuclear divorce. Ronaldo left for the Saudi League, but this time with bitterness for the club that gave him everything. Then comes March 5th, 2023. Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0. A scoreline that stuns the world. Ten Hag's system crumbles, players hide. By October 2023, United sit 10th, battered by Brentford and Brighton. The manager blames standards and culture, but fans blame him. Despite finishing 3rd in Ten Hag's first season, his second was disastrous. United finished 8th in the league. On October 28, 2024, Ten Hag was sacked following defeat against West Ham that left the club 14th in the Premier League, with just 3 wins in the first 9 matches. Another rebuild, another failure. The squad was a circus of broken dreams. Walk into Carrington today and you'll find a museum of bad decisions. Look at Antony, 0 goals, 0 assists in 33 games, a $100 million prank. Rashford, from 30 goals to 5, lost in Dubai nightclubs, sneer tabloids. Casemiro, once a UCL titan, now a traffic cone chasing shadows. The Glazers, still clinging to power, greenlight another $200 million summer spree on teenagers and injury-prone rejects. Gary Neville couldn't hold. It's not a squad, it's a retirement home. On November 2024, Manchester United appointed Ruben Amorim as the new head coach, and trust me, nothing changed. They are awfully struggling in the league, 12th position in the league, winning only 8 matches out of 23. Old Trafford, once a fortress, now echoes with rage. Protesters chant, "We want our club back." The South Stand unfurls banners. Glazers out, Fergie would be ashamed. Even the Stretford End falls silent. This isn't Manchester United, whispers a lifelong supporter. It's a zombie club. Sir Alex Ferguson once scoffed at City as noisy neighbors. Now, Pep Guardiola's dynasty laughs as United beg for scraps. Klopp dominated with Liverpool, and Slot is following that path. The Theatre of Dreams hosts TikTok influencers, not titans. We used to fear them, says Jamie Carragher. Now we pity them. Now the question isn't when will they return, it's will they survive? Will they? Let us know in the comments. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more interesting stories.